Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Garth Avery. I'm the lead designer of Primordial Secrets, a deck building game, and I'm here with the man who has put in a lot of work and a lot of effort and really a lot of time to playtest my game and not just my game but tons of other games. This is Aaron Beadle, game analyst is one way to put it. Um, uh,
I put it.
yeah. uh,
Self-attributed titles.
yeah. So thanks for taking the time. Um, I guess why don't we just kind of open up with a softball question. This is more for me than for you. Just to get us warmed up here. So let's say you're on a desert island with a couple of your mates. Um, you're going to be there for a long time. You're probably going to die there, and you only get to bring one game. What would that game be?
It'd be it'd be cooperative, so we don't and all end up killing each
Mm.
other. It definitely wouldn't be like Monopoly or anything that can cause any disputes.
Hmm.
Um, Almost definitely would involve resource management. See, I suppose the easy answer is something like Friday, which is a game about being trapped on a desert island.
Oh, there you go.
But I think it would be something. Wouldn't be a Euro game because they tend to work with sort of bigger infrastructures and lots of numbers and economic things to consider. So it'd be something small and compact and simple in the way a desert island is simple.
Mm.
I don't actually play many games like that, to be honest. Not a desert island person
Yeah, I
personally.
know. It's a.
Yeah, something cooperative and fairly simple. Maybe is it Hanabi, the
Oh,
fireworks
there you
one?
go. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
Something with a communication restriction, so we
sure.
can learn to appreciate being able to talk to each other.
Yeah, you're gonna be there for a long time. You're gonna want something with some
Yeah.
replayability too. Maybe maybe you know what? Maybe something with just a ton of pieces, so you can just rearrange them and make your own games while you're on the island.
Maybe just stick so we can just hit each other and just call that a game.
Yeah, there we go. All right, we're already devolving into Lord of the Flies. Great. Um, okay, a lot of people love games. A lot of people want to take a stab at making their own, and a lot of people have gotten so far as to design a game that's a pretty decent idea. Uh, where do we go from there? Like we're not done yet, right? There's a whole development
Yeah,
process. That's sort of where you come in, right?
yeah. So there's kind of a pitfall that I think pretty much every designer on earth falls into at some point, and I think I did for quite a while at one point. Although I'm quite back then, I was very underconfident, so I just but generally assumed everything I did was bad. But once you start getting to that point where things do start to work and the game sort of starts to build its own personality and its own energy, and people start getting attracted to that. And it's less about them coming to help you and more them coming to help the game. Basically, they get invested in the game. It can be easy to feel like you've kind of cracked games design at that point, like, yeah, this is how a good game feels. And then you put it like in front of some randomers somewhere, and you get a ton of criticism, and you just think
Mm,
everything I knew was wrong. I was completely deluded. I give up, and
yeah.
it's this strange effect of when you're a designer sat with the game testing it, people become very friendly because it's an opportunity. It's like, oh well, I can make friends with a developer here or a designer. That's pretty cool. And I'm actually involved in the creation of this game, which is an inherently enjoyable thing. Once you say the game is finished and you put it on a table and there's no possibility really of that person being involved in the development, it's just purely about delivering an experience to that person, they become a lot more critical because they don't have that inherent appeal of the developers in front of me. I can give them good
Mm,
ideas. They might put my name in the rule book, or
hmm.
maybe they'll become a billionaire and they'll like hire me as their butler, their games design butler or something.
That's a long
All of
shot
that
in the
appeal's
game
gone.
industry, but yeah.
I'm gonna make it happen. It's the
Okay,
only
nice.
reason I'm in the industry. I
All
want to
right.
become a games design butler. Yeah, it's having that awareness of like that there's a
Yeah.
different kind of. It's not really a higher level of difficulty. It's just a different level of approaching games design from designing games with people who want to sit there
Hmm.
testing the games for you and pushing those games out to people who want to buy the game.
Yeah. I mean, you can't create a game by yourself. Like
Yeah.
regardless of how much playtesting you want to do or any of that, you've got to have some input. So you've got, I mean, I think, in my opinion, one of the key things that you need, right, as a game designer is the ability to take criticism, take input, and sort of parse which things work for what you're trying to do, and which things, right, you can
Yeah,
maybe.
communication
Yeah,
skills. There's I forget who it was, but one of the bigger names in sort of the tuition of games design said communication is one of the most important skills, because games are a tool of communication. It's about communicating ideas, rules, the reasons why you should care about the rules, the reasons the strategies in the game matter, what each person intends to be happening. And then when it comes to play testing, it's also, being able to understand people's intentions. Sometimes they'll say something that sounds harsh. If you can pick up that harshness is because they really care about the game and they're
yeah,
being extra critical of it. It's sometimes better than when someone just goes, "Yeah, it was alright, I enjoyed it," and
yeah,
you'd be
no,
like, "Well, that doesn't help me much."
hmm, yeah.
Like it
I've
really
had that.
doesn't in the grand scheme of things. If
Um,
you're having a really bad day, it might cheer you up a bit, but
sure,
being happy only contributes to certain
yeah.
parts of your design. Sometimes you need to be upset about your design because that's what motivates you to realize this part isn't working. If you were happy about the things that didn't work, you'd probably make a pretty terrible game.
Yeah, there's nothing worse. I mean, I've play tested my game with dozens of people. The worst. I mean, I appreciate everyone, and I love to gather the stats and just the balance stuff. But like, I love it when, especially like you were one of the first people to play test Primordial Secrets, and you just tore it apart. And I love
Been
that.
told off many times.
No,
Like, you
it's
shouldn't be that mean, dude. But I do try to be encouraging.
yeah,
But I'm definitely. I think most people have a lean. I'd say the majority of people now have a positive lean, where they're trying to be encouraging. I think I just got so used to criticism over my life because I don't know if it's the way I talk. I have a very monotone, depressed sounding voice. I think people are just like, he'll just accept criticism. He's used to it. So I'll just like when I go into things now, it's just like this isn't an unusual amount of criticism. This
yeah,
is a normal. This is me being mild. But I'm definitely I don't like the people who are like harsh as a kind of gimmick. It's like, oh, I'm really harsh. I'm going to be the
oh
Dark
sure.
Souls of playtesters, and you just like that also doesn't help me.
um,
Try to be appropriately harsh. If
yeah,
someone feels like their morale is a bit shaky,
yeah.
I'll be a bit kinder and I'll call up a friend and say, can you say some nice things to this person for me? I'll third party it.
Right. I mean, at this point, you've had a lot of experience playtesting other people's games. You've probably worked with how many games would you say you've helped develop?
Games. It's tough. There's really no effort has been made to track it, but I would guess at this point, I'd say about 250 to 300 is the ballpark. I'd definitely say at least 200, just because if I think now, I can just see a flashing
Yeah.
like clockwork orange montage of games that I've gone through. I can't even. People will be like, "Oh, you tested my game. Remember this one?" I was like,
Yeah.
"There's like six that fit that description."
Yeah. Have you found yourself sort of differing your like development and feedback method depending on what developer or what designer you're working with? Um,
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question, actually. For how harsh I am, I think everyone really needs, or if everyone benefits from keeping in mind that younger developers and less experienced developers, they have sensitivities, they respond more intensely to certain things.
mhm,
Younger and less confident usually means that your compliments can overfuel them, and your criticisms can kind of hurt them too much. So you need to be very like lots of caveats in the way you offer those. Like if you offer encouragement, be like, "This is great, but this is what I think you need to work on now." Because if you just say this is great, I'd be like, "I have completed the game design quest. I'm going to go and pitch now." And then those people aren't going to buy their game
yeah.
just on being nice.
Yeah.
And then there's also the experience thing. If they're under experienced, I think a natural part of doing this sort of work is you talk to people a lot and you get good at articulating things, and people who are good at articulating sound like they know what they're talking about. So constantly emphasizing like there is no way to know what you're talking about in games design. You can see something work 1,000 times, and then the game you go and play test will be the one game where it doesn't apply. So you say things from a perspective of, in my experience, and if the person you're talking to is less experienced, you really emphasize that. You have to like register that in what ways you can and be like, okay, this person, I really need to emphasize that this is my opinion. It might be based on a lot of experience, but it's still an opinion at the end of the day, even if it's well informed, and
Hmm.
even if it works like 99% of the time. I've played weird games where the rules just don't apply.
Right.
Very rare, but
Yeah.
there are some like that.
Um, what do you have a specialty after? Have you after all this playtesting and game analysis? Have you kind of found yourself that you're like more specialized in a certain genre
Tailored.
or more specialized towards like
Um,
balancing or mechanics early or late development?
I
And
had aptitudes early on,
okay,
because of because what I do wouldn't really. So just to clarify for whoever's listening, people pay me to test their games. It wouldn't work very well if I had to turn down certain offers based on the genre and the type of game, the target audience. Because you're not being buried in offers basically. So you have to kind of be adaptable. So one part I actually really like about it is there's a lot of motivation to broaden your thinking and to try and learn how other people enjoy things rather than just how I enjoy it. A big moment for me was playing Clank and watching people enjoy Clank, and I was looking at it as a mechanical player, just thinking this is complete nonsense. There is a deck building mechanic that is doing random things. There is a map movement mechanic that is doing what they call it definitive things like non-random. How do those things work? They don't work mechanically really in the sense that you can't strategize that game. You can play really well and just lose. And I used to hate that in games, and then I
yeah,
saw these people having lots of fun, and I was like, why? How dare they enjoy this? This is wrong. And then after I sat and thought about it, I was like, they're enjoying it because it's telling a story, and not all stories are based in logic and reason. The world isn't a meritocracy; it doesn't always make sense. And games, especially thematic games, which would have been my weakness, um, they kind of simulate that part of life where it's like weird, kooky things happen. It's not all maths and numbers. So now I'm a lot more of a jack of all trades. If there was a strength, it would definitely be problem solving. Um, or I suppose the two ends of that dial, which is locating the things that are doing the most damage and locating the greatest opportunities for expansion into new things. So the kind of fine tuning, I don't focus on as much
mm-hmm.
purely because that is more about how much time you put in than how much
Yeah,
experience you put in. Both help, but that's just the nature of fine tuning. But I love doing stuff like I'll always try and come up with one weird idea for every game. Like there
yeah,
was one I played yesterday, Life at Depth, which is based in the water, and I was trying to work out how you could play it in a tray of water. And if you could like just get the tap, fill the tray, put the pieces, float the little boat around, it'd be a complete nightmare. You'd have things floating all over the place and that, and the dog drinking out of it, but you'd have a story to tell.
yeah. No, that's
I like to think outside the box.
yeah. That's I mean that's useful. Yeah, you brought up a good point though, right? Every game has maybe a different audience, right? And you have to, as a developer and as like a professional developer, you've got to be able to get into the mind of different audience,
Empathy,
right?
yeah.
Like what like you can make a good game that you don't like. uh,
It's a weird thing
yeah,
that you see. Sometimes people will think they will have what they want to create, and they will have an idea in their head of how you create that, and they'll completely fail to do what they want to do, but they've coincidentally created a game that is perfect for a different audience,
hmm
and then you have to go through the process of trying to convince them to stop chasing what they want, that they're not going about the right way, and realize that they actually are coincidentally good at creating the kind of games for people who aren't like them, which is just a weird thing that comes out of the nature of games design because there are so many variables and dials and levers you can push and pull.
yeah,
That just happens accidentally sometimes.
yeah. What what sort of so there's basically in my opinion, I'm not sure if I'm right on this, there's kind of two ways you can go once you've got a good game design idea and once you've gone through the development process or you're sort of starting to think about this is a game that I want to put in people's hands, and
Yeah,
it's either like the self-publishing route or like the seeking a publisher route.
yeah.
Do you work more, do you have like a I don't know. Do you have opinions on which method is better slash which sort of
It's
designer you work more with?
it depends on what for what I do. It's almost always self publishers. I do get people who are looking to pitch, but I haven't really thought about it much. There's something about people self publishing, where the idea of hiring a an independent freelance sort of game analyst makes more sense to them, or maybe they just search it more often. In terms of which route's better, I'd say it comes down to, for me, for example, I'm very design oriented and experience oriented. I like the part where you're making the game better, working on the game. Um, when I get to the point where the game it feels really good and solid, and I have to start thinking about promoting it and the whole mechanics of selling it and that, I just completely lose interest. So for me, it would be great to just pass that off to someone who did all that stuff and enjoyed it, because people are better at the things they enjoy usually. So I would probably never try and kickstart or self-publish, because as much as I do enjoy learning about that stuff and talking about it, it's only from the perspective of being able to pass that knowledge on to other people who want to do it and, give value to them personally. I don't care about being the guy who runs the Kickstarter that makes a lot of money and that. Not because there's anything wrong with it, it's just my brain doesn't handle those responsibilities as well as the responsibility of make this game good.
Yeah.
Like, I want this game to be good, and I'll just be like, okay, I'll make the game good if I can, or I'll give up and cry for a month and then come back or something.
Yeah.
Whatever
So
process is normal.
yeah, that's a good point. So we talked about sort of your development sort of experience, but you're a designer as well. Are you kind of do you have anything you're currently working on, like just designing yourself, or is it mostly are you focusing on developing other folks' games for now right now?
I quit my store job 2 weeks ago, but even 2 months before that, I was trying to pick up as much freelance design work and consultancy and playtesting as I could. And those 2 weeks really get in that, because I lose the whole day. I have to drive to work, I get back, and then I have to like just float in my bed and try and disassociate for an hour, because I've had to talk to old people about the same things that they've talked about for the last 3 years for like 5 hours. So when I forgot the question now. I randomly lose my memory sometimes. That's a thing that happens.
No, I was
Can you
just
repeat the question for me,
yeah,
please?
yeah, of course, yeah. I was just wondering if you were designing any of your own projects right now, or if you're just
Oh, of
working
course,
with
yeah.
other folks.
Yeah, I have stuff in the background,
Okay.
ideas that now that I've got more time, I think I'm going to try and put some time into. As I said to you before when we started recording, I have a habit. It's a good habit for me, but it's generally not a good habit as a designer, of trying to find something that's difficult to do, and then once I've done it, I move on to the next thing that's difficult to do, which means I never actually finish a game fully polished, because a lot of the very final fine tuning polishing stuff, to me, is like, I want to learn how to fix the big problems, not the little ones as much. Not that I don't. I've done a lot of that. I've play tested games like one of Kinswins, which was the first one I did. I tested, I think, 900 times across, or 900 hours, which is more than 900 times. I tested that one far too much, considering it wasn't actually that good. I just thought, I keep testing it, I'll keep getting better.
Yeah.
Just a very polished stone. Yeah, I've got a few little ideas. Usually, when I see a problem in someone else's project and look for a solution, and the solution's interesting, and they don't use the solution, and I'll usually just throw that at people for free. That's not like a service. It's just like, oh, have you tried this? And then they ignore me, and I'm like, well, it was a good solution. I don't want to waste it. And then it turns into a whole game, which is about 50% of my designs, to be honest, are
Yeah.
just based around the solution for other people's problems.
Yeah.
Just quirky solutions I can find.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be coming.
The game. I mean, there are a lot of games out there, right? Like, I feel like there's a kind of unique challenge that's sort of in this day and age of coming up with something kind of original, right? What
Yeah,
what do you how do you approach that? Is there like do you try to
originality.
yeah
Well, I like the word novelty. I think novelty is a much better word.
okay
It's within the context of the current culture of gaming, is the thing you're doing pushing us in more interesting directions. Because to say originality, everyone gets got, oh, original, nothing's original, everything's stolen. It's like, yeah, we all stole everything from the first star when they shot out a load of atoms and whatever.
sure
But novelty is like, it's recognizing when people are falling into patterns and trends and doing things just because everyone else is doing it. Deck builders are a nightmare for that. The amount of deck builders I've seen that do, and this is not to knock Primordial Secrets, but I can't
no
actually
just
remember
keep
if it's a
ripping
deck
it
builder.
apart that's fine
Yeah, the playtest never ends. um, yeah, is I played a lot of it. I mean, that's quite a unique deck builder, but I have played a lot of deck builders where it's just like, what's the unique quality? But it's a deck builder, and deck builders are a new thing. It's like they're not once 5 deck builders got big, they kind of got,
yeah
that was the limelight. Do something new. There's a lot of very interesting deck builders. It's
yeah
one of my favorite mechanics, just because it's a very synergistic mechanic. You can push deck building into a ton of different mechanics, and it'll work with them. But yeah, novelties that, another tip I give people is quality is a novelty of its own. If you create the best version of something that's been done a few times, that's fine. You don't need a completely unique spin. The how well you've done it can be the unique thing if you've done it really well. I've just lost my concentration. Got it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's a good point. I think I've seen a lot of games recently that are just kind of, I mean, they're fun games, and I love playing them, but it's just like Dune Imperium, one of my favorite games right now. It's like it's just a deck builder plus worker placement with like some combat things going on, like kind of stapled together. And that kind of
Yeah.
stuff can work though, right? Like if I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got a good theme, you just have to if everything comes together, it can kind of be a cool thing.
Yeah, you don't even need that tightness of design. Sometimes there's a lot of it seems like there's a big emphasis now on having like on grace and fluid mechanics and that and things where there's no kind of excess. But the nature of games design is sometimes you know you have so much time that you can realistically afford. You can put that time into polishing and whittling down what you've got, or you can put it down into adding more stuff. And depending on your target audience, sometimes they'll appreciate the volume of content more than the kind of grace with which it is delivered mechanically. So again, that's all a choice. It all comes down to like what parts of people's brains you want to entertain. Basically, is I think the best way of putting it.
So yeah, so let's just talk about kind of the business side, right? You're I've got a good game idea. I've printed out some cards, sleeved them up in some like in front of some magic cards or whatever, and I'm bringing them to you. Like, where do we start? What's sort of your process like?
So if it's very early, like kind of, I've got a vague idea. I usually suggest consultancy, like do an hour or two talking about your objectives, talking about how you would proceed in developing the game. Usually, a lot of it is reassuring people, reassuring them about IP theft, reassuring them about play testers, and one of my biggest hurdles at the very start was being embarrassed to put my games in front of people. Um, which was it took me like 3 years to get over that and I think test my first game and it went absolutely terribly and then I found Tabletop Simulator and I was like if it goes badly I'm just gonna have a convenient power cut and it never really did because people are weirdly nice sometimes on the internet or completely not nice but I got lucky and they enjoyed that they were very appreciative of the first test so it's always like just be wary if you're gonna have to test it publicly you're gonna have to put up with the fact that sometimes it's an extremely demoralizing thing um, it's not like you've made a cake and they didn't like it, so they tell you once and then leave. It's like if they stood there for an hour explaining why the cake was the worst cake in the world. That's kind of how feedback comes out sometimes with public playtesters. Just forewarning them of that kind of stuff, and then looking at a few mechanics that should work for them, trying to set out in stone because this is something new developers fail to do a lot of the time is to set out in stone what they actually want to achieve and what their motivations for making the game are. Some people design because they want to learn about the human brain, they want to learn how mechanical things work, they want to learn about maths, they want to tell a good story. If they don't know why they're doing it and they can't tell you why they're doing it, it that ties into their entire design philosophy, and you can actually see that when you play test the game. Some games they'll be about to publish it. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm looking to publish it soon," and you can ask what's your target audience, and they won't even know. They won't even know what the philosophy behind the game was because it's just never come up. Most volunteer play testers, well, I'd say most, let's say 60% as a ballpark figure, don't ask those kind of questions
Mm-hmm.
because they're usually not testing games themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that differs in designer communities where everyone's a designer, but in public playtesting, which is where I advise people to do most of their playtesting, is in public, not in designer communities. You're not going to get those sort of questions. But beyond that, it's just advising them to come back when they've got something solid that they can test, because to a degree, it doesn't make sense to pay someone to test a pile of stuff that isn't formed in any specific way. I can only tell them what most people would tell them at that point,
Mm-hmm.
which is fix it. It doesn't work right
Sure.
now.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yeah. So people people with like a at the kind of start of their journey can come to you, get some consulting, and then
Yeah,
if they're close, is and then they just need like some reps. of the game to find out some stats, what cards are too powerful, that sort of thing. Is that something that you could kind of take on as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I can do, but I always advise against it because I'm kind of, I guess my metaphorical profile would be, I'm trying to think of something like a minesweeper. I don't know, to target specific areas where there are potential and areas where there are issues.
Okay.
I do the ironing out stuff as well, but long term, it's very expensive to pay someone to pay anyone to do the what you'd call the bread and butter of games design. You know, the labor part. I tell people like if I can do like 3 hours session, 2 hour session, do an analysis, highlight key areas for potential things that are going to mechanical clashes because that's something people miss all the time is when two of their mechanics are actually conflicting because that's not you can't see that without actually analyzing the game and saying what does this mechanic do in the game, what's its actual impact on the gameplay, what does that mechanic do. They just look at what are the rules for this mechanic, which doesn't highlight the clash.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, for that kind of reiteration I try to guide them. Again, I can do consultancy, once an hour a month, even. It saves them going 4 months with one lingering problem that
Right.
reduces playtest efficiency. Rule books are a big one. People will test for months and months without a rule book or with a bad rule book. And what they don't realize is the 3 hours they save writing a rule book, they've lost about 60 hours of playtesting with playtesters confused or testing the wrong rules because they're having to guess.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess once you're trying to do final fine tuning, what would you suggest? How do people like get those like big raw numbers to get those reps in?
It's It's the first thing I did when I tested 900 hours was I got the numbers. And what I realized was at the very end, one change I made on a complete whim had a much more positive impact than 900 hours of picking numbers out.
Yeah.
And that was a really sad thing. And that was probably the biggest lesson I ever learned is sometimes the thing that requires almost no effort or experience will do more. And you have to try and keep an open scope for it. And if you tunnel vision on fine tuning, you become blind to I could just rip this one mechanic out and the game miraculously becomes better.
Yeah.
So for people looking to fine tune, I would say, firstly, be ready to or be willing to accept that the payoff, the time to result payoff is diminishing constantly
Oh
as you
yeah.
fine tune. The last hour will make a lot less progress. It's more important progress, but it's less volume of progress than the first hour of fine tuning. So at some point you have to say this is where I'm calling it.
Yeah.
And then just keeping in mind that even when you're fine tuning, it doesn't mean all of your problems are tuning problems. You might still have underlying mechanical clashes, player interaction, issues with your player interaction model. Sometimes I'll just be like, have you just tried making it co-op? Have you just tried making it
Yeah.
competitive? And they'll be like, oh my God, that works so much better. Um, yeah, I think there was one game. I can't. It was Forest to Pangaea, and to me, it was a very off the cuff suggestion. It was just like, why don't you just remove this piece? Or I don't know if it was added piece. It was a pretty small change. And then they messaged me afterwards like, yeah, that was like a great change. It changed the way players interact with each other. I know that was it. It was you can basically build formations on the board and then you score them. And I said, why don't you just let anyone score anyone's formations? And somehow it just made the game. The player interaction went up. Scoring became more balanced somehow, or I think it did anyway. But and they were in the fight. They were getting ready. I think they had about a week from print or publish or Kickstarter or something. They were pretty close to the end. And that's a lot easier for me to do because I'm not the one who has to take the risk and suffer the consequences if I make a bad suggestion, which I try not to because people wouldn't pay me very often if I just ruined the game all the time, as fun as it might be to just watch the chaos I was causing. But when you're actually working on your own game and it's like I've just spent 900 hours play testing over and over again, and this one change invalidates most of that testing. That's pretty hard. But in my case, it worked, and if it hadn't worked, I might have never learned that lesson. So there was definitely an element of luck in
Yeah.
that learning experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should wrap this up with you not ruining a game, and I could tell a little anecdote about how your suggestion. So, Primordial Secrets involves uh, basically everyone's secretly selecting like their intent for the round, and
Yeah.
it was your suggestion to add like one extra intent. So
Okay.
I played for like it was like in 2 years the game had like one round where everyone's intent is kind of known because that's you just have enough intents to go around. You were like,
Yeah,
let's
this
add one more
deduction.
so it's unknown, and that just added. I mean, it's crazy how much just that little change
Yeah, just a
just
small
kind of blows it
suggestion.
up. Yeah.
And it's again, it's kind of I call it design awareness. That's a big part of what my service offers. It's making people aware, making the developer aware of what options they do have, and kind of breaking that tunnel vision they sometimes
Mm-hmm.
get, where it's like they don't know where problems can exist. The reality is problems can exist anywhere in a game's design, from one little number on one card. It can everything interact with everything. So one seemingly small thing can change everything in the game.
Oh
It
yeah.
can also change nothing in the game, and you realize it didn't matter at all, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just irrelevant. But yeah, design awareness is a big part. Like trying to, and that's something I try and encourage all designers as well. Is always try and think outside the, but don't assume the answers outside the box, but try and remain aware that like the solutions are not always where they usually are, and where you found most of your solutions. Sometimes the most important solution is in a weird place.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, and that's why you need to get a professional, right? I mean, even if you don't think you
Yeah,
need a
ideally.
professional, it's I think it's just invaluable to at least maybe have a chat with you and see
Yeah,
what sort of things you can offer.
and I don't. It's not. I don't like if people want like a 10 minute, 15 minute chat. I don't like to just to talk about the game and its
Hmm.
potential and its scope, and I don't charge anyone for that anyway. I do. I do enjoy just talking about people's games. That's fine to me. It's better than sitting talking to people on Reddit, which is a very unproductive thing. I can talk to them about relevant stuff to my work. That's nice. But yeah, it's one of the things I struggle with. I'm not a very good self promoter.
Hmm.
I have quite a to the point way of talking about things, which is the worst way to be for promotion. I've found I
Yeah,
have to act
definitely.
if I want to promote, and I hate acting.
Yeah.
So I have to like put exclamation marks at the. I don't know why, but it just upsets me putting exclamation marks at the end of things. It's like this is happening tomorrow, and it's like this. Nobody's getting excited by this extra exclamation mark. But if you don't do that, I think they just assume you're just miserable or
Yeah.
something. So yeah, promotion is not my strength, but trying to communicate to people that it's a service where you can't demonstrate the value of it until you're actually doing it.
Hmm.
So I do free demos sometimes, and that takes hours. And sometimes they just say thanks and then disappear, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, nearly got it. But it's just
Yeah, no,
part of
I
the
mean,
work, I
yeah,
suppose.
game design, no one, one person maybe has gotten rich off of game design, but it's it's a fun thing, and you can make something great with a little bit of help. Let's see. There's the website paperweightgames exclamation point .co.uk. And thank you so much for joining us. People can reach out to you in other ways too. I've seen you all over the place: Reddit, Twitter. You've got some.
Yeah, I
You're up
went
on
around.
Discord. Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interview. It's a lot less weird than me interviewing myself in the bathroom or something. Don't know.
Well,
Yeah, no,
we
gonna
could.
be.
We'll make it weirder next time. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll do a special, yeah, bathroom podcast. I look forward to it. I'm going to put that down on my calendar. Yeah, thank you very much,
All
and
right.
good luck. I think you've got your Is it your Kickstarter that's starting soon, or is it actually your printing? Is it?
Yeah, no, the prototypes are out. Sent off to some influencers. We're going. Actually,
Nice.
today I'm hearing back from Gen Con. If they say yes, I've got one launch date. If they say no, I've got a different launch date. So I'm going to announce the launch date like real soon.
Awesome.
So we're getting there.
Nice.
Thanks
Good to
for,
hear it.
yeah, thank you. And I'd love maybe one more playtest sesh with you at some point. We
Yeah,
can
definitely.
kind of there's a I think the game's pretty good, but I
No, it's not. My
exactly
kind of
I
senses
need you
are
to put
telling
me
me
back in my place.
too
Yeah.
confident.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. See ya.